Welcome to Krystel Clear. I'm excited to share my journey of healing, worthiness, and living a purposeful, intentional life with you. Subscribe to follow. Hello, and welcome to my very first episode of Krystel Clear. Really funny. Last weekend, I probably tried to talk myself out of doing this in every way, shape, or possible. And then Monday morning, I went into a training at Om Shop, and the entire day was based on what is your soul purpose? What is your soul meaning? What is your soul mission? And how to connect with that. So that was the smack in the face confirmation that I need to be here. I need to be doing this work, and I have a lot to share. So here we go. For as long as I can remember, I've had this underlying, festering little voice telling me you need to do more. You can help this, you can help that, you can and I really internalized that to a point where I feel like I lost myself in it in a lot of different ways. And I feel like now is my opportunity to speak my truth, speak my voice, and share my story with the world. So, and I think my husband and my girlfriends will really appreciate me sharing the love a little bit because I've probably exhausted them with all of the self-help journey that I've been on for the past, really my entire life, but wholeheartedly the past couple years. So, rolling back into trying to talk myself out of it. Oh, Matt's out of town this week. I could probably do it a different day. I have a lot going on. Maybe I should spend some extra time with Brody and wake up slow and blah, 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 blah. What is that? You know, I was telling my acupuncturist yesterday about the same story and that I was, I should reschedule or maybe no. She's like, it's really great to hear someone who's super outgoing and authentic and chatty and social have fear. And for a second, I was like, fear? She's absolutely right. Not like fear, I'm scared to be in front of the camera because I love the camera and I am kind of a ham. But the fear of change, the fear of like really sharing that vulnerable side of myself with the world. And not that I don't do it. I mean, I do it plenty on social media. I do it in my in-person relationships, but this is a little different, and I'm not doing this for likes or shares or hype. It's more of just putting stuff out there for the world to hear because I needed to hear a lot of those things along my journey, and hearing them, whether it be Brene Brown, TED Talk, or reading a book on clarity and connections, or Dr. Shefali and all of her conscious parenting, all of the things I needed to hear, but I had to be in a place where I was open to hear it. So just having that awareness for myself that it's okay. Like it just takes like the next step. And here we are taking my next step. Put my big girl panties on today and I got in here and chatted with the awesome crew and I'm ready for this. So a little bit of my background. I we'll talk about several things on this podcast, everything from childhood trauma to eating disorders, to body dysmorphia, to exercise health and fitness, to neuromuscular massage therapy journey, to, being the wife of a CEO and parenting struggles and blended families and, all the things of a lot of life experience to share. And I'm sharing it from a place of vulnerability and just open, raw, authentic, like life has its ups and downs and all arounds. And there's gonna be shit, like a lot of shit. And it's okay because it's really like honing in to being aware and accepting all the things that come your way. And that's been a really big journey of mine. And I think something that I'm just at a place that I feel like I really need to speak my truth and share it with the world. So, starting from square one, I was born and raised in Tallahassee, Florida, and I had an interesting childhood. My parents loved me unconditionally. However, I think that they did the best they had with the tools that they had. And my father died in a car accident when I was 2 years old. My mom really couldn't, she was a young mom. She was 18. It was 1985. It was Party Central. She couldn't handle it. So my grandparents raised me, my paternal grandparents, and they were amazing, but they also had their stuff and their wounds. And what I realize now in the place that I am with a blended family, 4 children, a lifelong experiences, that generational trauma is real and it affects us on a cellular level. And that's something for me that's just so intriguing because I remember being a little kid and having those moments where I wanted to play small or not be seen or not be heard. And then I remember those moments where I would want to have a big voice and definitely be heard and stand my ground and be assertive. And, I was called bossy more than once in my lifetime. And that's okay because now I just realized I was just developing a lot of great leadership skills. Um, so realizing now as I look back that it's because of the ways that I tried to navigate um, and respond instead of reacting, which there's definitely a ton of times that I reacted in my life situations. But I remember, big parties and a lot of adults. I was always around a lot of adults and I had cousins for sure, but there were mostly adult parties and everyone would be drinking and hanging out outside and big football games. And I remember going in my room and closing the door and turning on like Paula Abdul or Whitney Houston and just singing as loud as I could or making up dance moves and really like not knowing at the time that that was my own little therapy. Or I would go outside and do cartwheels and make up dances out there, or climb trees. And, being in nature was always something that I used to self-soothe as well as dance or singing. And, it's really been interesting because on this healing journey that I've been on, and I'll break it down and jump forward a little bit. A couple years ago, my husband and I went to the almond clinic and got brain scans. And so realizing in those brain scans that I was diagnosed with complex PTSD, it was like, what the hell? Like, I've never been to war. Almost like I wasn't worthy of this diagnosis of PTSD in the crazy way that that sounds. But then looking back at all of the things that I endured in my life, it's like, absolutely, I was always struggling to find a safe place. And I realized very young that I had to create that safe place on my own a lot. And again, loved my family and they did the best that they knew how, but there's just so much generational stuff. It was thick and it was heavy, and I never really felt like I belonged, to be honest. Like there were times where I was like, I can't relate. I can't relate to what they're talking about. I can't relate to what they're saying or what they're listening to, or I always felt like I was a little bit different, and I was, and that's okay. Um, and I remember the old Southern saying, like, she's too big for her britches. And it's like, what does that really mean? And thinking back at it now, it's like it's kind of like that invitation or permission for you to play small. And I think I did in a lot of ways. And that's something that now that I have a 13-year-old daughter, I'm very cognitive of. Um, and I just make sure to build her up in all of those situations and make sure that, but I haven't always been that mom, and we'll get to that. Maybe not in this episode, but another for sure. And the evolution of parenthood is definitely a thing. Having a 13-year-old and a 3-year-old and doing it 10 years apart has been something. But I look back at the ways that I learned, like, sports were always a big thing for me. Like I love flipping and jumping and gymnastics and dance. And, when I realized I could run and change my body, and going through adolescence when your body really starts to change and really not liking what was going on, and realizing that I could run and it was that therapy for myself, like realizing in my household, if there were things that, my grandmother had lost my father, and she dealt with a lot of depression, I think, when I was growing up. And I never really understood it to a point. And I still have never really experienced deep depression of any kind. I've always found my ways to cope. And usually that's being outside or running or exercising. But when I got this diagnosis of PTSD, it was it was eye-opening, because it's like, if I have it, how many other people may have it? And what is this from? Like, what is, again, like, it was like almost like I didn't feel worthy of having this diagnosis because it felt really serious. And so I dove really deep into trauma work, and thank goodness for my life coach, who's actually coached us into getting the brain scans in the first place. Um, talking me through and opening some doors for myself to really understand what trauma is. And I think that it's a big misconception that it has to be some big catastrophic event, but it really doesn't. So for me, it was prolonged exposure to situations that made me feel unsafe, and how my mind reacted, and my mind, my body, and my spirit reacted to those situations. And that's big, because again, I've always been very just intrigued by human health and behavior, and which led me into my career of health and fitness, and then neuromuscular massage therapy, and now more into the trauma and resiliency world and energy work. And it all really boils down to that, like, that reactivity and those patterns. And so realizing what my patterns were as a child were to escape the environment, to escape the situation I was in. And as I got older, it's like, well, okay, so you dance and sing in your room when you're a little kid. So what are you going to do in adolescence? You're going to go for a run, or you're going to, mask it with being social, and, you're going to develop an eating disorder and really try to control things, because, if you can't control your environment and the things that are going on around you, you can control what you eat and you control the way you look. And that led into high school. And to be honest, it's something that is still predominant in my life. And it's something I think that you forever recover from. And we'll get into a lot of body dysmorphia chats and in a later segments. But realizing that I am not my mind and I'm not my thoughts has probably been the hugest awakening for me. And it's not just me, it's everyone. Like, again, going this weekend, like, oh, you should reschedule. Maybe it's stay for a week where you don't have much going on. But no, you prioritize anything that you really want to make important. And that's exactly what I've done. And that's exactly why I'm here today. And I'm here and I'm doing the first session. And, that's something to really think about, because the mind is a fucked up place. It really is. But having that awareness to understand that it is huge. And to be able to overcome any of those, whether it's a worthiness situation or a fear or doubt, or your ego is taking over and telling you, you dress differently or look different. It's like there's so many different components to it, but understanding that you're not those things. Like, what we really are is what we feel inside. And that's like the soul connection. Like I know I'm supposed to be here. I know I'm supposed to be sharing my voice and my life experiences with other people. I come in completely unscripted and just talk from my heart. So I'll probably be scattered around, and that's okay, because that's authentically me. And for those who know me are probably laughing right now. And those who don't, you'll get to know me. And there's been a lot of books and a lot of like hardcore awareness that's led to realizing the thought patterns and understanding ways that I use to cop out of situations or make excuses, or find ways to just, what, I'm overwhelmed right now, I'm just going to go for a run. But those are all, now I'm realizing, all trauma responses. And what our huge trauma responses are, or what the key ones are fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. And I've done my fair share of all of them. When I was younger, before I was able to hone in, I held a lot. I had a lot of abandonment triggers. I had a lot of insecurities, as I think all young children do. I had a lot of anger. I didn't really understand why things happened the way they did. But I also had a lot of love and positivity and joy and laughter. And, I grew up in a household where it was pretty jovial and goofy. My uncle in particular is always the jokester, always had things to say, always had, whether it be polite or impolite or definitely not politically correct. He always knew how to keep it light. Same with my Nana. She was fantastic. And and super lighthearted. And so just having a balance of all that, I think I'm very grateful for. And I know that now that I'm 38 years old, I realize that not everyone has that balance. So I try my best to instill those values into my children and my friends and my family, and keep it light and keep it fun, but also keep it serious and like open-hearted and vulnerable at the same time. And I think because being raised by my grandparents, it was that generation of it's okay, like, we just won't talk about it, or let's brush it under the rug, or, oh, my grandfather, I love him, but he's one to walk into a tough conversation and walk right back out and go grab a beer. My nan, very different. She was one to sit down and really, I could share my heart with her, and I could share most things with her that I felt open to. Now realizing I share everything with her because she's now a guardian angel. I lost her in 2013, and I think it was really at that point in my life that I really felt the deep gratitude for my childhood. I think that there's a lot of things that I look back and I held anger for, that I realized, my mom, she went out and did her own thing, and she was a drug addict, she was a prostitute. She had quite a life. She would come in, she would be baptized and be fine again, and then she'd go back out and, go missing for a few years and whatever. And so, but I realized that was her stuff. It had nothing to do with me. And I think that having the awareness of myself and understanding that, I was kind of playing a victim role and personalizing other people's suffering. And that's been one of my other huge awakenings in the past few years is, I personalized everyone's suffering because I'm a huge empath. And, I do have the ability to feel energy in a room, whether it's positive, negative, or somewhere in between. But realizing that other people's stuff is not mine to carry is something that I am forever and will forever be working on. Um, whether it's my husband, my kids. It's funny, my girlfriends and I, we were talking, and why is it so easy to sit and listen to a conversation from a girlfriend or a friend or whatever, a family member, and they can completely be venting and have the shittiest day and all this stuff happening to them, and you're just there to listen. But then if it's your spouse that's having the rough day or the rough time, or like we personalize it so much, or our parents, like if they're having a rough day, I remember as a kid, like, oh God, like being scared, like not that anything bad was going to be happening, but is it something I did? Is it something I said? And I think that goes back to that fear and the worthiness trigger of just knowing that it's okay to have that separation. And I think that that's something that I know it's something that I'm really working on with my own children, is explaining to them, I'm having a bad day, or such and such happened today. So I'm a little bit more on edge than I should be. So I just want to let you know that. And if there's anything that I say or do, I just don't want you to take it personally. And especially with my spouse, we have a really big life. We have a lot going on. He's running a business, and I have to know that if he's having a bad day, that has nothing to do with me. And maybe sometimes it does. And that's okay too. We'll handle that a different way. Um, but just knowing not to personalize other people's stuff has been a really huge revelation for me. Um, and realizing there's so many times in my life where those trauma responses came up when I did personalize things, like, fighting and arguing when I felt like, someone's having a bad day. Well, why? And it's, well, that's their stuff. Leave them alone. Let them handle their business, or freezing and shutting down and just not having anything to say. That's a huge one as well. And flight, that's probably my biggest pattern I've learned to break, is I have to get out of here. Like, it's not safe, I'm gonna leave. Like, this isn't gonna work for me. This isn't, whether it's um a client or a spouse situation or a social situation, like, okay, this doesn't feel safe, I need to leave. Where obviously there's cases where that's the case, and if you don't feel safe, you need to leave. But realizing that that was a pattern of mine was really huge. And fawning was probably um, That's a kicker. And that one is one that I constantly have to pull the awareness for because it's, fawning can look like people pleasing, or I'm just going to throw the best party and I'm going to just set the table perfectly and just make everything perfect because then it's going to make the atmosphere more perfect. I'm going to over compliment someone when they don't really need over compliments. They just need for me to sit and listen to them. Or I'm going to be the class mom that gets to everything and does everything perfectly. Like, no, it's unrealistic. It's setting those realistic expectations, and I don't even like to use the word expectations because I feel like that puts an extra level of pressure on us that we really don't need. Um, but just finding neutral ground and realizing and having the awareness, of course, I'm still going to have the trauma responses, but being educated on them and what they are allows me to have that awareness. And it's been a really big journey overcoming, understanding what trauma is. I actually just completed through Florida State a trauma and resiliency course, which I feel like is what we need to be teaching children and just people in school in general. It was super eye-opening, understanding the generational trauma from different demographics, understanding, um, the different ethnic groups and what their traumas they're more exposed to and more prone to, understanding my own generational trauma and, just I come from a very humble beginning. So my family, I had everything I ever needed and wanted, but my grandparents, I mean, they were born into huge families. I think my grandma had like 7 siblings, and my grandfather had like 6. They were out picking in the fields, and she came from California. She's picking melon. Like all of my grandparents, like one of my grandfathers was like homeless in New Orleans when he was a kid, and the other one grew up and she was chased around with a shotgun as a child. They've had some pretty traumatic beginnings, but just understanding how they overcame that and they made something better for themselves. And my grandfather that raised me had a great construction company in the 80s and 90s. And my grandmother on my mom's side ended up being the governor's secretary for years. And, so they really did do more with their lives than the previous generation. And I think that that's really all we can do for ourselves is take and appreciate where we came from. And if there's something in that didn't work for us, try to do better in the next steps and make us as a better person. I think that that's just kind of my motto on life and parenting and marriage and relationships, anything. Like I've always wanted to be the best version of myself. And that's really evolved. Like, what does that look like? Like, what that looks like right now is very different than it looked like 5 years ago. And it's very different than it looked like 5 years before that. And honestly, it changes every day. Having the grace and compassion, self-compassion is huge. Having the self-compassion to be like, okay, your best today is going to be a little different than it was yesterday. And your best tomorrow is going to be a little bit different than it was today. And that's okay. Having acceptance that like there's ebbs and flows and twists and turns, and we're going to have things that arrive in our life that are going to like knock us down. And it's not about being knocked down and how long we stay there, or blah, blah, blah. It's, okay, so what are the next steps? What are those steps that I can take to be a better version of myself right at this moment? And I feel like that's exactly what all of my intention of this podcast and sharing my voice with the world is really about is resiliency and perseverance and how we can overcome and work through and navigate and understand, not just avoid, but really truly understand the depth of where our thoughts come from, where our feelings come from, where our emotions come from, and really navigate through life in a healthier way than we have in previous times. I want to talk about worthiness for a second. And I think it's something that every human on the planet struggles with. Kind of the reason I envy animals, because I feel like that's just part of their brain. They don't care. But I think if you think of dogs, they probably actually do have some worthiness stuff. um, as I mentioned before, I tried to talk myself out of doing this today and showing up. Not intentionally, and that's the funny part. And then I was called out and said, "What's your fear?" It's like, well, wow. there's fear. I think it's fear of worthiness. Like, am I worthy of sharing my voice? Am I worthy of the life that I have? Am I worthy of the beautiful, healthy children that I have? And I feel like that's something that I have absolutely struggled with my entire life, is not feeling worthy of the blessings that I've been given. And that's something that I've definitely become more aware of. And part of coming out of that is literally every day in affirmations. I am worthy. I am capable. I am passionate. I am deserving. Really, it's like what we tell ourselves. I think it starts like in elementary school. Like, am I worthy of this treat? Or, it could go the other way too, when the ego takes over and feeling like things aren't fair. And I've never really had that type of mentality or really understood like fairness is just different. Like, everyone's unique opportunities are very unique to them. So I get it for other people. And I'm a giver. I'm huge philanthropist at heart. Like, I've just always been very giving. I remember as being a kid, I'd always like to give my stuff away. And there were times where I went through selfish periods, obviously, but in giving my time. And that, I think, is something for me in starting this whole journey of podcasting, potentially starting a business and all of these different things. I had a conversation after I finished a certification on Monday, and it was for IET, which is integrative energy therapy, which is an amazing tool to release, different energies from your tissues and kind of, hone in on your soul's purpose on an energetic level, and absolutely love the course. But I mentioned to my instructor, like, I have a hard time. I feel like with my financial position, I'm pretty comfortable, but I have a hard time charging for services. Like, I feel like it's more of a conversation for someone. And I just want to do it out of the goodness of my heart. And she's like, but Krystel, you have dedicated so much time and energy and finances and everything to getting to this point in your life. You have to, and she's like, the way I like to think of it as an energy exchange. And for me, I mean, she's speaking my language with the energy exchange. It completely 180 navigated those thoughts in my head. It makes so much sense. I've put so much time, so much dedication, so much energy into just always trying to manifest this better version of myself, and learning and sharing the vulnerability and owning my mistakes and owning my shit and knowing that I'm definitely not perfect by any means in any way, but I'm like perfectly me and perfectly unique, and that's okay. And I'm worthy of all of the different opportunities, whether it's, the position I have in the corporate world or the children that I have that are super healthy. We just had some friends that went through a really tragic loss of their son, and I never know what to say in those situations because it almost makes me feel unworthy of having healthy children. And I mean, obviously, I would never want anything terrible to happen to my children. But when that happens to other people and we go through those grief cycles, it gives gives me a sense of like, wow, like that could have been me. It could have happened to us. Like, why them? And obviously, those are the patterns and the thoughts in the head that we just need to, break the habit of having in the first place because things happen. Um, but it's really interesting. I I hone in on this, and I've probably read every Brene Brown book and watched every one of her TED Talks. And I love her books on men, women, and worthiness is actually a really great one. But like how we hold shame when we feel like we're not worthy. And I feel like for me, it's overgiving or over explaining or doing too many acts of kindness. Not that you can do too many, but you know what I mean? Just going a little overboard with it. That's kind of it's a fawning response. Again, it goes back to those trauma responses of, how can I fix this situation? Because watching other people suffer makes me uncomfortable. And that's the hard truth behind it. Yes, it has something to do with them. And I'm a super empathetic person. And I understand and I really do feel other people's feelings to a fault sometimes. Um, but realizing my hard truth on that is I don't like to witness other people being uncomfortable because it makes me uncomfortable. But why does it make me uncomfortable? It's because I'm personalizing something. So going through the patterns in my mind of why am I personalizing? Why are you taking this to heart? Why can't we just accept the fact that things happen? Why can't we, accept the the generosity or the blessings or the financial blessings? It's something that I'm a total work in progress, and realizing I have a lot more work to do in this area, and I share it because I feel like everyone does. I think that, and historically, my old patterns, especially when I was still drinking alcohol, would be, everything's going too good. Like, where's the drama? Like, everything's going so smoothly like right now. Like, something's about to happen. Something bad's going to happen. Like, how many people do that? Everyone. Everyone does that. Like, you go through and like, oh, everything's been running so smoothly and navigating so well. Like, what's next? And breaking those patterns of everything's running smoothly, everything, like, how do we break that? It's gratitude. It's, having that intrinsic motivation to just show your gratitude every single day and switching those conversations with yourself. Like, I'm so grateful I have healthy children. I'm so grateful that I have, a great husband who has a really solid career position. I'm grateful that I have a career position and a job of my own. I'm grateful to have the opportunity to speak to people about this. I'm grateful to have all these different opportunities fall in my lap since I've been on these journeys, like, being on the resilient retreat board and in my dive deep with trauma, I from a girlfriend, she was planning an event and she's like, "Hey, I would love for you to help me plan, set up for this big event. And you would really love this facility and it's really pretty." And, so I pull in for a tour, and it actually just so happens to be on land that my daughter used to ride horses. And it's a nonprofit that provides free programming for people that have survived trauma and abuse, or first responders or helping professions, which I feel like we're kind of all helping professions, to be honest. Um, so I go and take a tour, and it's still under construction. And the executive director did the tour, and I went with a girlfriend of mine, and we're on the tour, and they were talking about the different areas and the things that they're doing, like, journaling and yoga and energy healing and equine therapy and neurofeedback. And I'm just like in trauma recovery heaven. Like, oh my God, how is this for real? Like, I can't believe this. It's crazy. And I guess the executive director saw my excitement because I was not holding back. I think I probably hugged her like 4 times when we were there, because I felt like at home in a way. I felt like this is incredible. I don't know how I want to be involved, but I want to be involved. Just let me know how. And from that meeting, we had a couple emails, and I said, I definitely want to volunteer. How do I volunteer? How do I help? And sent me all the materials. I logged in, I did all the forms, I did all the screenings, I did all the things to get the ball rolling. I started a trauma course, and we ended up having a lunch with the founder. And during that lunch, I dished out my dirtiest trauma crap, like all of it, my whole life story, all the trauma stuff. I think it was like the one time I felt like I had a super safe place and someone who would understand. Like, she also had complex PTSD. She also had, crazy things happen to her in her childhood. She was also exposed to a lot of things. So she understood me. And I just poured it all out on the table and more. So being in my most vulnerable place, and I didn't think twice about it. I felt great about it afterwards. I remember getting in my car and be like, "Wow, that feels really good." Like, I just like released like 20 pounds of shit off my back. Like, that felt really good. And that one conversation led to an invitation to be on her board. And that to me was probably the day, the truly the day that my worthiness started to shift. Because not only am I absolutely deserving of that opportunity, but being in my most vulnerable place and sharing like deep, dark shit about my childhood, my marriage, my parenting, my exercise addiction, my body dysmorphia, my Adderall addiction when I was a kid. I mean, all of the things. I mean, the nasty, murky stuff that I don't really talk to a lot of people about led to an opportunity of a lifetime, to a place that I had dreamed about. Like, I remember telling my girlfriend, like, I just want to gather all of these awesome healing modalities I've been able to experience for the past couple years and put it into one place. Well, here we go. This place not only exists, but you're going to be involved. And now you're being asked to be on their like whole strategic plan for the rest of the future of the nonprofit. And it was just, I was blown away by the experience. And to be honest, I really am still in awe by it. But it's really allowed me to own I am worthy. We're all worthy of all the blessings and all the things. And honestly, if we do have bad things happen to us, those are just opportunities for growth. And understanding that and getting and breaking out of those victim mentalities and poor pitiful me, or this happened. Well, yeah, there's going to be things that happen. And some of them are going to be catastrophic, and some of them are going to be little day-to-day bullshit things. And that's okay. But learning how to first of all, have the awareness to know you're not your reactions or responses to them, and understanding what's going on in your mind and having the self-awareness to hone in on the big picture with that. But also, just again, it goes back to the gratitude, having gratitude for, wow, like I may not get this opportunity every day, but I have it right now. So embrace it and take it. And I actually talked to my life coach this morning before coming in, and she said a word that came to her was savor. And to me, that was really impactful. And that's something, excuse me, I've really been trying to do in my marriage and my parenting and just in my day-to-day life, is savoring the moments, adding more stillness and stop being as busy. My husband's out of town, and taking my kids who are 13 and 3 on a walk to have dinner, and watching them run around and play, and pushing them both home in the stroller. And like, those are memories that they may seem simple, and they are, but like I'm savoring them and appreciating them. And, my time at Resilient Retreat might not be forever, but I'm savoring those moments and my opportunity to speak to all of you, just savoring these times, because the only thing that's guaranteed in life is change. We're not guaranteed tomorrow. We're not guaranteed our next breath. We're not guaranteed anything other than change and the evolution of that and all of its forms. So I think the more that we can learn to embrace it, because I know firsthand, I used to be a person that tried to control all the things, and I did not do well with change. In some ways I did, in some ways I did not. But learning how to adapt and have that resiliency through all of the situations that we're given, and they're blessings. Like, if you think of all of it, they're blessings. And if whether it's good, bad, or indifferent, it's something that can teach you something about yourself and other people that you might not have had the opportunity to learn before. And that's what I love about life. It's, every day I wake up, it's a new day. Like, it's my choice whether I want to dwell on things from yesterday. Um, I read a quote one time, and it's like, why you wouldn't look through yesterday's garbage to make tomorrow's dinner. No, it's disgusting. So why do we do that to ourselves? Why do we look at things that happened yesterday and choose to carry them into today? Um, and those could be good or bad. Having this, if you're on everything's great, and then, something bad happens, that's what leads us into those like depths of disappointment. It's like just understanding the ebbs and flows and how to adapt to those situations, and that it's constantly evolving. It's like water. And I feel like, I don't know, I swear I was a mermaid in another life. But like the ebbs and flows of water, and just picturing yourself kind of swimming, and it's going to be high tide, it's going to be low tide, it's going to be, but learning how to navigate and all of that. And mostly in our minds and our bodies and our spirits, and finally finding things that fill you up. For me, it's finding time in nature. It's having great connections with people and being able to connect on a different level. And I think that's part of my fear with starting all of this is like, what's next? Like, okay, I'm putting myself out there. I'm talking, I'm putting some pretty raw, vulnerable stuff out there. But what's that going to bring? Is it, am I going to be flooded with people trying to talk to me? Am I going to be overwhelmed? But who cares? Like, I'm just going to learn to adapt and ebb and flow. And it's okay to say no. And it's okay to set boundaries. And learning that as individuals, I think really help us from taking the next, or help us to take the next step. It helps us um, really understand that we are in control of our life. In a society that I feel like I admit I do not watch the news at all. Sorry for all of my media friends. You're great at what you do. I don't watch you. I don't look at, I'm pretty sparse on social media. I get on, I'll post a couple healing, healing things. I'll, some good quotes, some positive uplifting stuff, but I'm really not one to search and look through. I can't handle it. And it's something that I've never been able to relate to be honest, because it's like out of sight, out of mind, and call me naive if you want. And ignorance is bliss when it comes to stuff like that. Like, I like being in my bubble and I like surrounding myself with, healthy conversations and healthy mindsets and, understanding that I don't have to feel obligated. We have a great big life and I'm involved with a lot of philanthropic things, but I don't necessarily have to attend all the events. I don't have to participate in all the things. It's okay to say no, and it's okay to step back, and it's okay to do what serves you. And I think that I've just gotten to a point in my life where I'm giving myself permission to do that. My husband and I, just kind of evolutionary wise, we've just decided that we're not drinking. Like, we just don't drink alcohol anymore. And it's not like I'm never drinking alcohol again. It's just every day I wake up and, I'm not drinking today. And that's just kind of the way that I like to think about it. And it's not, a lot of mine has to do with health issues. And I'll get a lot more in depth into some of the findings I've had with, hormones, adrenal fatigue, leaky brain syndrome, blood-brain barrier stuff, food allergies. I'm really looking forward to covering a bunch of like broad topics when it comes to all of this, but it's just like just making that choice every day. And I think that that's something that's huge because I like a good challenge. I like to set goals. I like to push myself. I like to win. I'm pretty competitive, but I also have like a softer side as well. But I realizing that it's just take it day by day. I'm just going to be present with my kids today. My husband will tell you I used to be the person that was planning the next trip when we were flying home from that trip because it was like, oh my gosh, it's like FOMO. Like, I don't want the fun to end. I don't want to go back to normal. I'm like, but no, I appreciate going back to normal. I appreciate going home and unpacking and unwinding. Appreciate the slow days. Appreciate the busy days. And that's been a huge pivotal part of my personal growth and development, mentally, physically, spiritually, is taking it day by day. I was the person that used to plan my workouts all week. And if I didn't make a class or if I didn't do this, I would beat myself up mentally. And it's like, why? That's just giving opportunity for those negative thoughts to enter your mind when I could totally face it from a place of gratitude. Like, wow, I'm really blessed for this beautiful day and all of the opportunities that are coming to this day. And when I go to sleep tonight, I'm going to kind of recite my three. It's kind of something I do either in the morning or at night, and sometimes both. My gratitudes for the day. Like, I'm grateful for this beautiful day. I'm grateful for the opportunities in the day. I'm grateful for the slow moments, for the fast moments, whatever it is, just having that gratitude in each day. And I think that has been something that's helped me with the trauma recovery. It's helped me with, eating disorder recovery, body dysmorphia recovery, from drinking alcohol, from taking Adderall, from, all the things I've been involved in, from gossipy conversations. Like, there's just things that don't serve me well anymore. So I don't participate. And I take that day by day. And I think if there's one thing that I'd really like to emphasize, and like one place I could recommend everyone start, is gratitude affirmations and taking it day by day. And it's been a pleasure to chat with you all. And I'm really looking forward for everything to come. I have a lot of awesome people that have been on my path with me and my journey with me. And I'm looking forward to sharing much more of that with you. And again, we're going to talk about all kinds of fun topics, all kinds of self-healing topics, the feel-good stuff, the not so feel-good stuff. Yeah. So we have a lot more to come, and I'm super excited to be here and sharing my light with you.